The Legendary Mechanic, Chapter 419. The Unobtainable is Always Tempting, 2. His aged face was pressed tightly against the ground. His gorgeous robe was dirtied with dust, and Razor was completely unable to move, as if he was being held down by a mountain. He was furious and shocked. He had finally seen hope for the lifelong dream, and he could not let it disappear no matter what. Even if the opponent was someone strong from the higher world, he could still fight. Razor activated his magic power. A blood-red and blue magic current gushed out from his body, stirring up a strong wind. The faces of Rex and the soldiers who were more than 100 meters away changed. Nitrome Repulsion Ring pushed away enemies within 10-meter radius, and was used to deal with enemies who were at a melee range. It was a must-learn spell for Planet Dawn mages. Its power depended on the mage's strength. The ring cast by Razor was the strongest that Rex had ever seen. It was said that only Ascenders could have such strong magic power, which meant that Razor had reached that level. Rex's face tightened. The situation had suddenly become much more difficult. "Get ready to throw spears as backup," Rex ordered loudly. All the Blue Shield Knights beside him raised their cone-shaped spears and prepared to throw them. From what he saw, Razor now had the strength of an Ascender, and should be on par with the higher world warrior. Hence, he decided to interfere and help, just in case. However, when he turned around, he noticed that all the other higher world mercenaries had their arms crossed with calm expressions and seemingly no intention to interfere at all. Li Jin smiled and said, "You don't have to worry. Black Star's captain's strength is very well known among the mercenary industry in the Garten star system." Rex was stunned for a second. He then took a closer look past the gushing spell and realized no matter how enormous Razor's magic power was, Hanzhao continued standing like a reef. His hand was pressing Razor firmly to the ground, not budging in the slightest. At this time, Razor suddenly noticed that a horrifying power was brewing in the mechanical suit hand pressed on his head, like some kind of strong attack was about to be released on his head. His weak body would definitely not be able to withstand it. In a panic, he could not be concerned with pushing Hanzhao away and was hastily casting all kinds of defensive enchantment spells on himself. The next moment, a gray fog appeared around the Void Dragon mechanical suit, flowed down the arm, and shot out from the palm. Razor's head was being grabbed by Hanzhao's palm, and he faced this energy directly. Boom! With a violent explosion, the gray fog surged out. Like 1,000 sharp blades, the gray shockwave spread out. The floor was filled with cracks in an instant, like it had been plowed. At the middle of the explosion, a pit with a diameter of almost 2 meters appeared. Before the explosion aftershock had yet to disappear, gray light glowed from Hanzhao's body once again. The second energy exploded immediately after. Void Jet Spray! Even though the enemy was rather weak, Hanzhao was not taking any chances and gave it all he had. Although Razor was grade B, the same grade as him, Razor had only just passed through its door and had yet to familiarize himself with his powers. It was a piece of cake for the great mechanic Han to fight this kind of novice grade B. He used 3 full capacity Void Jet Sprays continuously without stopping, using 1,170 points of the mechanical suit's energy. 3 high damage number... Restart. He used 3 full capacity Void Jet Sprays continuously without stopping, using 1,170 points of the mechanical suit's energy. 3 high damage numbers appeared above Razor's head, adding up to a total of 4,700 health points. It only took a few seconds. This ability's damage efficiency was extremely high. This was the strongest explosive ability without using Flaming Will. Flaming Will had a 5-minute cooldown, and Void Jet Spray had no cooldown. It had become Hanzhao's go-to ace. The smoke and fog disappeared. Razor was lying down in the pit, his body covered in wounds from the energy shocks. Void Jet Spray was a pure energy attack, and it contained the space attribute. Just as the ice attribute would slow and fire attribute could burn, the direct effect of space attribute was ignoring a part of the target's resistance. Having taken damage of more than half his health points in an extremely short time, Razor was heavily injured, and he had fainted. A small boss character with grade B attributes had been demolished by Hanzhao within 10 seconds. After many combat experiences throughout the 9 months, Hanzhao was already very familiar with the Void Dragon mechanical suit's attributes and functions. This single unit battlesuit was definitely one of the top on the list of the strongest mechanical suits in the current level, and Void Jet Spray was a very good ability against supers on the save level. How is the strength difference so big? Rex's lips were dry. He was completely astonished. Razor was already the strongest on Planet Dawn after he gained these powers. Even 10 of him would not have been enough to be able to beat Razor. Yet in front of this mercenary, Razor was as powerless as an infant. Are all the people in the higher world this strong? The soldiers of Planet Dawn were dazed. Something that was so difficult and important in their eyes had been solved so easily. Everyone felt it was almost unreal, like they were in a dream. Hanzao pulled Razor by his collar and threw him before Rex. His mechanical suit folded itself, and it was back in his clothes. The 100 or so artilleries around him turned back to compressed orbs, rolled on the floor following the attraction of magnetic force, and rolled up to Hanzao's belt and clothes in a neat queue. Done. Pack up. Hanzao clapped his hands. With strength now, even crushing the whole of Planet Dawn was a piece of cake. As if he had just awoken from a dream, Rex ordered subordinates to tie Razor up with multiple chains. He explained, "The king wanted me to capture Razor alive and bring him back for interrogation. We need to know where he learned the ancient ceremony to prevent the possibility of someone else knowing the spell to absorb origin water magic powers. Do whatever you want. My job here is done." Hanzao raised his eyebrows. At this time, Razor woke up slowly. Still dizzy, he realized he was tied up by magic-expressing chains, and the magic in his body was forcibly restrained and could not be used. Subconsciously, he wanted to struggle and resist. Then he saw Hanzao, who stood on the side, and he immediately stopped his actions. As long as Hanzao was there, resisting would just give him more shame and torture. However, he could not hold back his rage and stared at Hanzao and clenched his teeth tightly. If not for this external help from the higher world, he would have already succeeded. Before this, he never would have expected the Vane Kingdom's king to be able to call such a strong reinforcement. The people were culprits that had ruined his plan. Razor hated their guts. "Why did you stop me? This obviously has nothing to do with you." Hanzao shrugged and said, "There's no way. It's all a job. I've dealt with dozens of outlaws like you. Thieves have no rights to complain about the police. If you want to blame something, blame it on your own luck, being bad, and meeting us in your act. What's your motive?" "I don't want to be trapped in a behind planet forever. Can you understand the feeling of surprise and my dreams shattering when I knew they were just one of the countless races in the universe? We're not special, but that means we have the many friends too. I don't want to be ignorant forever, and I don't want to stay on this planet and wait for my death like the rest of these people here. I want to see the real world." Razor pulled the chains, making clanking sounds. "Since my ceremony has failed, you have no need to deal with me anymore. Aren't you mercenaries? They can hire you against me, so I can hire you too. Please, take me away from Planet Dawn. I can offer you all my wealth as a reward. If you don't need that, I can work for you too." Razor was still making his last struggles. The soldiers at the side heard this and could not help but get nervous. They were afraid that the higher world mercenaries would change sides. Hanzao, however, did not hesitate at all to direct the new mission that popped up at his interface, Razor's request. He said coldly, "Sorry, but Black Star Mercenary Group keeps its words. Furthermore, even if you had quite a good reason, it can't be an excuse for you to harm the planet." After returning to the surface, the army gathered and rested, getting ready to make their return. Rex found that Hanzao and said solemnly, "Captain Blackstar, Captain Legion, on behalf of the Vane Kingdom, I invite you here as to be guests at the palace. The king wants to thank you personally. Do you have the time?" "Sure, we will go with you then. I can take a look at Planet Dawn on the way." Hanzao nodded. Of course, this wasn't an excuse. His main goal was to get the intelligence regarding signs of the mutation disaster, and getting intel from the higher-ups of the kingdom was the most convenient way. Since the king had given him such a good opportunity, he was definitely not going to miss it. "I will stay too. Let's go together then." Legion did not want to stay initially, but he saw Hanzao accept the offer, so he changed his mind. He wanted to stay with the Black Star Mercenary Group longer and leave an impression. The Alliance cleared the battlefield quickly. The tribes left in various directions. The Blue Shield Knights escorted Razor and started heading towards the Vane Kingdom city. Late at night, the Blue Shield Knights stationed themselves on a plain. The night on Planet Dawn was very dark, almost pitch black. The wildlife consisted of mostly nocturnal creatures. Light could be used to repel them. Illumination spells were deployed around the temporary stations at the light source, but it was barely visible. Razor was locked in a prison car in the middle of the camp, surrounded by guards and continuous shifts. In the dark, silent night, inside a single-person tent, Hanzao opened the galactic communicator and looked at the mercenary hiring panel.